My name is Abigail Thomas, and I did my literature review over Picasso and Cubism. Picasso's first Cubist work was in 1907, and this sparked the entire movement of Cubism. My thesis said that Picasso broke tradition by three means: violence, perspective, and independence from nature. He did this in order to bring the audience into his paintings as an active participant in the paintings, instead of earlier eras where you could be more passive and enjoy the art for what it was. He forced you to participate in the art with him, and he needed your perspective and your understanding of the art in order to fully complete it. So the violence of Picasso's work came from the way that he deconstructed shapes and the object that he was painting. So critics and friends thought that his first work was super violent, and the rest of his works as well, because he deconstructed the human form into geometric shapes. Whereas earlier Renaissance artists, like the first picture in this slide showed, painted the human form in a more curving and beautiful way that depicted the final product of seeing reality. Whereas Picasso wanted to break it apart and put it back together the way that he saw it and the way that he wanted to portray it. And so while it doesn't show reality the way that we see it, it shows just a different side of how you can see things in lots of different ways. And it gives off an abrasive tone because of the harsh angles and the geometric shapes. And so that is why it was considered so violent, because he took nature into his own hands and broke it apart for his own art. Another reason that we can see that his art was violent is because he was commissioned to paint Guernica in the Paris World Fair. And this painting depicts the first aerial bombing in World War I of a purely civilian place. So this event had nothing to do with military strategy. It was just completely to terrorize this Spanish town. And so it was interesting because Picasso's art form that he has developed, Cubism, already matched all of those themes of the event so perfectly. The abrasiveness of deconstructing forms and broken pieces, harsh lines, and just disharmony altogether really reflected what this painting was all about, just the non-humanity of this horrible event. And I think that's why he was commissioned to paint it. And that just proves that his work was violent because it perfectly demonstrated this event. The next topic was perspectives. So Picasso really changed the game on perspectives with his art and freed up a bunch of modern artists to do the same. So paintings like this Renaissance painting used perspectives with shading and lots of different techniques to make it look like you were looking through a window. But Cubists felt that that was dishonest because you aren't looking through a window. You're looking at a solid picture. You're looking at one canvas that's two-dimensional. And so they thought that instead of capturing the final product of sight, the final product of looking through a window and what do you actually see, they wanted to capture the experience of seeing. So one way they did that was using perspective. And using multiple perspectives and angles in one painting clearly doesn't depict reality, because when you see one thing, you see the shading, the perspective, the depth. But they wanted to show the experience of walking around something and seeing like a picture from all different angles, up and down and sitting and standing. And it's more of an experience and emotion, the way our world actually works day to day, instead of just a snapshot in a window, which they felt was dishonest. The next topic was independence from nature. So Picasso really made his own laws of nature when it came to his paintings, and he didn't rely on what former artists thought had to be true of pictures for them to look real. And so the theory of relativity was brand new at this time in the science world, and it really was shaking all foundations of culture and society, because it was saying that things that we once thought were static were actually in motion all the time. So all of these particles are always moving, and that's kind of crazy. So he showed this through paintings like these, where it depicted motion and it depicted multiple angles at once. And he broke laws like one object can't be in two places at the same time, where in a painting he put them in two places at the same time. And he put the viewer in two places at the same time because he showed different angles of it. And that's where you can really see him drawing the audience into his paintings, because without an audience member, these paintings are nothing. They're weird images that don't make sense. But if an audience member can see how their different perspectives all come in to form one two-dimensional painting, that's where it's really amazing. And he also broke laws of nature when it came to the human form. His faces didn't look like anything anyone had ever painted before. He put eyes all over the place. He put them looking different directions. He put noses in disproportions. And this was all because he just didn't see these things as static, that they needed to be one face, one person, one body. He saw it as movement, as people look different directions back and forth, and a painting should show that. It should show the motion and the different perspectives on a person. And he did all of this in a two-dimensional form, though, to make sure that you never forgot that it was art, that it was a painting. It wasn't a snapshot of real life. It was his work, and that's just what he did. As you can probably notice through some of the pictures in this slideshow, there were two different main eras of Cubism. The first one was called analytical, and it had more monochromatic color palettes, and it focused a lot on the forms that he was developing and the unique style of the shapes and the angles and the lines and the perspectives. But then he got into the synthetic era in 1912, and that included more color, more textures. It got a lot more to do with collage, where he would use different materials to make his paintings instead of just paint and canvas. And that really just opened up a whole new world of art, and it really helped him expand from the original paintings that developed this art form into what is today all of the different movements that have followed. And some of those movements include the Art Deco movement that was involved heavily in architecture of the late 1900s, and it can clearly be seen how Picasso influenced these because of all the geometric shapes in the buildings, the two-dimensionality of a lot of it, and his art kind of allowed people to be able to go to two dimensions and go to harsh lines and not only be concerned with what was real and what was realistic and what was life. It was the broken down pieces of life. And so that's just really interesting in a way that Picasso had a huge impact. Also, it's very clear how the Supermatism art movement echoed Picasso's geometric shapes and abstracts. Someone even said that Supermatism is a non-representational form of pure abstraction. So they were completely disconcerted with representing something as it was. They just wanted to take the emotions and the feelings and the abstraction of an object and then paint whatever came of that. And Picasso really started this with a lot of his his later works in collage, where he deconstructed violins and bottles and all sorts of things that he just took them apart and didn't try to put them back together as they really were. He let them be what spoke to him and how he saw it and how he viewed it. And it was more experiential than realistic. And So those are some of the ways that he really influenced modern art, and he changed the way that the viewer is drawn into art. And I think that's the biggest impact that Picasso had.